child on the run. Deep state players, we know what you've done. A light is coming in, expose your every sin. As the mainstream media lies come undone. Here's a great man that drives them all insane, and he's gonna make America great again. I really want to introduce you to my friend Q and the people of the Great Awakening. Not long ago, as we all know, the CIA and NSA recorded every step we made. Surveillance tape recorded everything we say, tracking everything we do every single day. Our privacy stolen by the deep state. They didn't hide their crimes, that's a very big mistake. They didn't think about the good guys in the NSA, cause they thought that Hillary would be the president today. Here's a message to all my friends. Let me tell you about something that's happening, about a movement called the Great Awakening. The QAnon phenomenon is going mainstream. This time is coming.
Socialism and Marxism is our enemy. It's godless. It's a process in which they use, abuse, and discard.
You are running for Congress.
Yes.
I was thinking maybe there could be an opening. You could run for Senate out there. We've got one in Utah that might need to just rethink the whole thing, but that's...
Well, I'll tell you, Mike, I was fortunate to grow up in the Deep South back when we were taught patriotism, a love for God, country, family, and I'm so thankful to be in an environment where those feelings are still, those values are still very strong. So it's to me, it's like breathing my next breath of air, because it's nice to be in a place where we can fight for our values and know that we have support and process to get that done.
You've been outspoken about your views of loving this country. I want to focus more about America than I do just about even your congressional campaign, because I think the reason you're running is because you love this country. It's been good to you, and you feel that you have something to offer.
I'm going to give you a present from Booker T. Washington that he gave to my race, that for over almost a century allowed us to really do some very, very good things. A lot of people don't realize in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, it was the black community that led our country in the growth of the middle class, led our country in men committed to marriage, and entrepreneurs, over 40%. We're doing men matriculated from college. It was basically 4 tenets that he left with us, that if we recommit to these tenets, we can start having conversations no matter what side of the aisle we're on.
Yeah.
And those tenets are head, heart, hands, and home. Education, God, industry, and family. It really is that simple when it comes down to what are we really trying to get accomplished. We want to make sure our kids are educated, that we can think outside the box, that we can come up with solutions that are necessary for not only ourselves, but for others. God has been the center of our lives. The minute we allow the left to take that away from us, what we have is evil. And that's what we're seeing now in our nation's capital. People have no shame. They can care less about being honest because they don't think there's any consequences. Industry, if you want to allow a man to understand, or a woman to understand what it is to have self-worth, allow them to go to work. Allow them to work out the process of meritocracy. And that's what we've been really good at in our country. And the last one is family. As our family goes, so is our country. And we need to make sure our womanhood, we understand how much we need to respect that. Right below God is womanhood. And the minute we get our young men thinking about that once again, we'll get our country back. And our young ladies need to know, as they keep their values, young men who really want to get the respect will reach up to get that. So we need to have our ladies know, keep your values high. That's going to drive our country. And if we do that, we'll be in good shape.
Beautifully said, Burgess. I want to call attention to the most recent book you've written. You've written several. This is called Why I Stand. It's From Freedom to the Killing Fields of Socialism. You make it very clear that if you were playing NFL football today, you wouldn't be taking a knee during the national anthem.
No.
Why do you have a different attitude about that than some of these young players do today?
What we have to understand, and this is why I'm so strong on this, we've been at a war for a long time. The Judeo-Christian values has made our country great. It allows every generation to get better and better, seeing each other from inside out versus outside in. That's what's under attack. I have, from my vantage point, the privilege of saying, I see what socialism can do to any race, any culture. That great community I just mentioned, the reason why we turned upside down, because of elitists, socialists. We cannot allow that to happen to our country. So in the process of us understanding what we're trying to fight, socialism and Marxism is our enemy. It's godless. It's a process in which they use, abuse, and discard. And Americans, thank goodness for President Trump. I tell you, I love the fact he hates bullies. At the end of the day, it's what it comes
Yeah.
down to. And I understand that growing up down deep south. The way I was taught to deal with bullies, very simply, is you run at them as fast as you can and hit them as hard as you can. And that works. It gets respect.
Took you to the Super Bowl, didn't it? Yeah. You know, Burgess, what you just said is very important. You're talking about President Trump. He has helped lead in an economy that now has the lowest unemployment numbers in the history of America for not only African Americans, but for Hispanics, for women, and for young people. Is he getting credit for that in the black community?
He's getting credit because what Americans understand is when they start feeling better, they start feeling more hopeful, that's the American way. What I love what's happening with President Trump, he's finally pulling back the curtains of what we're up against. You saw, and I made this statement before, State of the Union, to me, I was playing a Super Bowl game, I watched a few. It was the greatest Super Bowl I've ever seen, 50-0 halftime, and those guys didn't have a chance of coming back. So what's happening is he's showing who loves America, those of us who applaud all the success, everything that's happening right now, and he kept with the victory after victory. Those who hate our country, hate Americans, love power more, are the ones who sat on their hands their entire time.
Burgess, you made a very provocative statement that I've heard of you. You said black elitists have done more damage to the black community than white supremacists.
That's right.
I couldn't say that.
Yeah.
You did say that. What do you mean?
And it's time for us to start speaking truth to power. And that's what's happening in the black community. We're waking up. You know, we've been on this plantation trusting the leftists, and you see where it's gotten us, Chicago, Baltimore. Every place there's hopelessness and misery, you find the Democratic stamp. We're finding people now waking up, particularly with President Trump. You're seeing more and more black Americans wearing a MAGA hat. By the way, my message, if you run across any black American wearing a MAGA hat, shake their hands and say thank you. Because they're on the front line. And again, what's happening is we're getting to the point where we can care less about what people say. And that's part of what our president is doing. The leadership is allowing us to stand stronger and be prouder and be bolder. And as a people, we're getting away from this PC correct thing that we were going through for quite a while. So I'm very excited to have a leadership that we now have so many people following his lead. And we're going to make America not only great again, but keep it great as we keep this process going, for sure.
You are a national treasure, Burgess. I want to tell you, for all that you're doing. God bless Burgess Owens. So the book is available on Amazon, or you can get it at burgessowens.com. Also follow Burgess and his campaign on Twitter at Burgess Owens and his websites.
When we're thinking about legitimate facts, figures, not just rhetoric, action-based solutions, conservatism is what saved me.
Your message is very, very timely, especially in this election year. President Trump is now polling with percentages of 20% and above in the African-American community. Some people say he might get 30 or 40% of the African-American vote. If he does, game over, he wins the election.
Approval ratings at 30% and continue to go up, and we know why.
Why?
It's because this is a president that has provided solutions to the ills in which a lot of policies. There you go. There you go.
Yeah. So let's be specific.
They like the word solutions.
And, you know, and that's an important point, solutions. Let's be specific. What has he done for black America that other politicians promised but never delivered?
Well, we can talk about the lowest unemployment rate among African Americans on record. We can talk about the First Step Act, which is thousands of people. I love y'all!
And that was very powerful. It was bipartisan. It was an important reform in the criminal justice system. And it wasn't necessarily race-specific, but truly, I think all of us have to admit, and I was a governor long enough to look at sentencing and realize people in the African-American community were getting sentenced disproportionately to other people in the culture. I mean, it was just a reality.
Well, let's be very clear about where these policies came from. Joe Biden was the architect of the '94 crime bill. We're talking about thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in jail. And as you've previously mentioned, a lot for infractions like a dime bag of marijuana. There's been a lot of individuals who had the draconian policies of the 94 crime bill or the 86 crack laws, again, pushed by Joe Biden and the Democratic Party, which have harmed the black community. So when we think about what policy solutions in which President Trump has offered, the first step back is a critical one because we're talking about thousands of people released from jail, 90% of them being African American. We're talking about permanent funding for historically black colleges and universities. There's been a lot of policies that no politician, whether they be a Democrat or Republican, in my lifetime that have been passed and implemented by this president and has benefited the African American community. And that's why I talk about that and taken for granted.
John, I want to be very clear. The president's First Step Act was not a get-out-of-jail-free card.
Of course not.
This was for non-violent offenders, often first-time offenders, who were going to prison for long sentences. A great example.
Yes.
Basically would have been in prison for life.
Yeah.
But really, the punishment did not fit the crime.
Correct.
Let's talk about, you grew up in the south side of Chicago. It wasn't the easiest place probably to grow up in. It's, I'm sure, a lot harder now to live there than it ever has been. President Trump 4 years ago made a statement, and a lot of people thought it was a crass statement, but it turned out to be pretty
What do you
blunt.
have to lose?
That's what he said.
That's right.
Vote for me. What do you have to lose? You've been voting for these other guys for all this time. Did that take root with a lot lot of people in the community?
I'll flip that on his head and say, what do you have to gain? And I just mentioned what we've had to gain. And this isn't something that's just been for African Americans. Clearly, it's benefited those in manufacturing, those in the Appalachian region who really needed the help as well. The opioid crisis, which is another issue, because I grew up on the south side of Chicago, extremely poor, lights, gas, and water off at the same time. I'm addicted to crack cocaine. So that's an issue that's very, very close to my heart. And I'm thankful that this isn't a president who simply talks about the issues or says how bad it is or use nice rhetoric like we've seen with Joe Biden and, well, maybe I shouldn't say Bloomberg because it's not nice rhetoric, right? so we hear what they really think. But this is someone who's providing solutions. And I think that moves the conversation forward. And I think it uplifts everyone. And I think that's the conversation we should be having as a country.
The power of your story is that if you were just a raw statistic, you should still be living in the south side of Chicago, probably on drugs and living in poverty. How come you got out, other people haven't?
My faith in God. And let me be very clear about that. Be very clear. I'm so thankful. And you know what? I think and I talk about it in my book, Taken for Granted, there's an overlooked part of faith, an active faith. One in which I think people need to realize, especially young folks, because I know y'all got it. I've been here in Nashville for all of a day, and people are praying for me in their Uber. So, and that's a serious story. Like, that literally happened today.
No kidding.
So y'all got it. But there's so many young folks in this country who don't understand that the power of God, the power of his favor, unmerited favor you don't deserve. So it doesn't matter about the decisions you might have made that might have been negative. He still have open arms to bring you right in and treat you like it never happened before. So with that being the case, me growing up in the church and having a pastor by the name of Bill Winston, if you know who he is, who taught, hey, I love it, who said you're not a victim, you're not your past, no matter if you were born across the tracks or on the tracks, you will be successful, you will be victorious, and that's the kind of God that I serve.
You know, when you talk about that in your book, the message is don't go around whining about the way things are. And you were so blessed to have a pastor who, rather than say, oh, it's not your fault. It's your parents' fault. It's your mother's fault. It's the neighborhood's fault. It's the government's fault. You had an influence in your life, in this case, a pastor, who did not allow you to wallow around in self-pity, but told you you had a shot. This was America. When you talk about that in Taken for Granted, this, to me, incredible book, and I think
you so much.
It's so very powerful to say, it's not about Democrats and Republicans or even ideology. It's whether or not you have the capacity to believe you are an individual, you're not just a member of a group, and you're not waiting on your group to get better for you to get better.
I believe we all, each individual in this room, all these hundreds of people, we have in us this hidden ability. We just happen to call it potential. It's just gonna take some work to pull it out, and every day there's an effort that you use to make yourself a better person. And with God's guidance, because I think that's key, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not to your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your path. With that guidance, You shall move forward. So we gonna counsel fear. No more fear. 2 Timothy 1:7.
There is a second part of the subtitle of the book that liberalism failed a lot of Americans. How did liberalism fail people, and more specifically in the African American community?
So if we look at this, look back to the 60s, the single mother rate was about 25%. Now is it about 80%?
Whoa.
Yeah.
80%?
80%. Clear facts. You can go Google it, research it. When you think about a lot of the abortion statistic, millions of babies aborted. So we don't have the kind of population in which we could have and really be able to flex that power.
And can we mention that more African American babies are aborted?
Than any other.
Disproportionately, not just in number, but proportionately. Why isn't there an outcry from more of the African American leaders about their community being aborted at a much higher rate than any other population?
Well, I mean, why would the Democrats want to say anything when Planned Parenthood is giving them so much money and resources for their campaigns? Like, that's a legitimate consideration.
Yeah.
We think about Margaret Sanger, who was the founder of Planned Parenthood, and what her original goal was, and that was the elimination of black children. So when we're thinking about legitimate facts, figures, not just rhetoric, action-based solutions, conservatism is what saved me. I mean, I lost a lot of friends. I talked about recently how I was at a Hollywood party and Tiffany Haddish, I went up to shake her hand and she says to me, "I know who you are. You're that Republican from Fox News." And she refused to shake my hand.
Wow.
And you know, I'm a single guy. Follow me on Instagram, @Gianno Caldwell. Slide in the DMs, we here. But you can lose friends, but at the end of the day, though, are you doing it for a greater purpose? And that's why I'm doing this. And I'm thankful to be an individual who worked in politics since I was 14, found conservatism, and I found a better life.
Child on the run, deep state players, we know what you've done. A light is coming in, expose your every sin, as the mainstream media lies come undone. Here's a great man that drives them all insane, and he's gonna make America great again. I really want to introduce you to my friend Q and the people